Good afternoon, and welcome to the first of our virtual candidate forums for the general election of 2020. My name is Sean Evans. I'm the President and CEO of the Meridian Chamber of Commerce. The Meridian Chamber currently represents over 600 member businesses, and combined, these businesses employ over 15,000 people in our area. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Government Affairs Committee, we appreciate the candidates that are running for public office that have agreed to join us during these forums so that our business members can learn a little bit more about the candidates and their positions on topics and issues that are important to the Meridian business community. This has been a challenging year for everyone, but some businesses have taken it harder than others, and the usual struggle to be successful in business has had many additional burdens put on it this year. That's why it's so important for the Meridian to be ready to move forward on the challenges that were in place even before COVID. From transportation infrastructure, the tremendous economic and population growth being experienced in the recent years, and to our tax structure and how we're going to pay for those needs of the future without burdening certain segments of the population. In these forums, we'll be asking the candidates to focus on their comments and answers to our audience, the Meridian business community. Virtual meetings have become a staple of our lives over the last 6 months, and campaign during this time is even more challenging. These forums are meant to inform the business community on the candidate's position. This event and the others are being live streamed on Facebook and will be available on LinkedIn and YouTube as well for later viewing. I'm joined today by Matt Davidson, publisher of the Idaho Press, who will help me moderate the forums. Good afternoon, Matt.
Hey, Sean, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. The Idaho Press and the Meridian Press are our partners in these virtual forums over the next 2 weeks. Without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to introduce each of the candidates that we have with us today and let them begin with their brief opening statements. Matt?
Thank you, Sean. Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I want to thank the Meridian Chamber of Commerce and, of course, all of the representatives and the folks running for office. We know you're busy right now. We know it's a crazy time, but we do believe strongly that these forums are a great way to communicate your positions with those who will elect you. So please take this seriously, and we're going to try and do our best we can with this new technology. I think the great thing is Sean has a mute button, so hopefully we won't have any issues like we've seen maybe on the national stage. So we're going to start with some introductions. So for Legislative District 14, we have Republican Scott Grow, who's the incumbent, running against Independent Ellen B. Spencer. We have Representative Mike Moyle, who is also the incumbent, running against Cindy Curie. And we have, for position B, Democrat Shelley Brock, running against Representative Diane DeMordaunt, who's the incumbent. So we have 2 to 3 minutes for your opening statements. Please recognize that Sean will be controlling the screen. If you see it go back to him, that means your time is about to expire. We ask you wrap up your comments as quickly as possible. There will be opportunities in this if we go to ask different questions and to engage in a little more dialogue, which we're excited about. But we want to keep it civil and professional and remember that our audience is the voters. So with that, Sean, I'll turn it back to you. Or I could, let's do this. Let me start with opening statements from Scott Grow. You have 2 to 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Matt. And I'm a CPA by profession, small businessman. I have the skills and experience to project the revenues and evaluate the budgets for the state of Idaho. I'm on the Economic Outlook Committee. I've been twice elected as a trustee on the West Ada School Board, serving as chairman there. I serve as vice chair of the Senate Taxation Committee, and as a member of the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee, where we review all of the funding and budgets for the entire state of Idaho. And also I serve as a member on the Judiciary and Rules Committee. As a member of these committees and member of the majority party, I'm in a unique position to create and support legislation which we can pass for the benefit of all Idahoans. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move to the independent challenger for District 14, State Senator Ellen B. Spencer. You have 2 to 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Okay, thank you, Matt, and thank you all for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am Ellen Spencer, the independent candidate for the State Senate seat in District 14. And I'm running because I believe that the needs of the people need to be addressed and worked on and back into our State House. I don't think this has happened for quite some time. And I've heard this when I've gone out and worked and walked and talked with the people. The legislature is focused on their personal agendas and party platforms, each other, and they're only listening to the insiders who have their ears. And it feels like the rest of Idaho has been dropped by the way. COVID has put the spotlight on our deficiencies, and we have serious problems. And we need serious people to help fix them, willing to shake off party labels, willing to work together, not for party, but for people, for the state of Idaho. And that's what I want to do. I am a small businesswoman. I was the risk manager at the College of Western Idaho, where I worked for 10 years. I had pandemic planning experience. That's very handy. I am the wife of a Boise City firefighter. We have a son at the University of Idaho. I've been an HOA president. I have been the chair of a capital campaign and the secretary. I have worked with Muscular Dystrophy Association, American Cancer Association. I was ambassador for the Sun Valley Ketchum Chamber of Commerce. I know business and I know people. And I am looking forward to continuing my service when I serve the people of Idaho in the legislature. Thank you all for your attention and look forward to questions.
Thank you for that. So we're going to move on to State Representative position position A for District 14. And hopefully we have Representative Mike Moyle online, ready to go. So you have 2 to 3 minutes.
Is this audio working now?
It does sound good. Yes, thank you, Representative.
Woo! Good thing. Sorry about that. Yeah, Mike Moyle, representative right now from 14A. I farm for a living. I was born in Idaho, raised in Idaho, lived here my whole life. I have 5 awesome kids and a beautiful wife, and we work hard at trying to make Idaho what it's always been, keeping it the great state that it is. And it's been interesting seeing the new challenges with the new growth and the new homes and the new people that are coming to Idaho. And as they come here, it's causing some impacts on those of us that have lived here all of our lives. For example, property taxes are climbing, caused a lot by the new construction and the new growth that's happening here, and some of those other issues that go with growth like transportation. So I look forward to hearing what everybody else has to say. Those of you that know me know that my forte is taxes. It's the main thing that I think is one of the most important things in Idaho. If we don't get property taxes and income taxes, some of these taxes under concern, it's going to be a disincentive for the businesses that need to follow with these people that are coming here to keep Idaho the great state that it is. So I'll look forward to the questions and answers, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Representative Moyle. We appreciate that. Moving on to our challenger, Independent Cindy Curie. You have 50 minutes for your opening statements. You're still on mute. There we go.
Now I know how my kids feel. I've been teaching virtually for about 8 weeks now, so I'm on that end now instead of the teaching end. So yes, I'm an educator. I teach chemistry at high school here in Boise, and I've been teaching for 30 years. I am running because I feel like I have some ideas. I have creative ways in which I think we can change some of the way things are going, especially education. And I come from humble beginnings myself, put myself through school, and I teach every day problem-solving skills, creative thinking, and I think that I can bring that into the state legislature and maybe create some positive change for Idahoans. And I'm running as an independent because neither party represents all of my values. I think that we're very divided right now as a state, and I would like to see us more united and come to a consensus in the state and actually get some things done. So I look forward to your questions, and thank you for having me here.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Our last race, we're going to start off with the incumbent, Guyan DeMordaunt. You have 2 to 3 minutes for your opening statements.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the forum and appreciated it in the primary. And again, appreciate the time that your members and your leadership are taking to give us the opportunity to connect with our constituents and voters. I have had the great privilege of serving in the State House for the last 4 years. Been humbled by that opportunity. One of the very first bills that I ran in the state legislature that was successful was focused on transparency. I think a transparent and ethical government is critical. Some of the committees that I have had the privilege of serving on, education, business, transportation, and a committee that I co-chair is began as the regulatory reduction committee, subcommittee, and then morphed into the occupational licensing interim committee. And the work that we have done is extremely relevant to our business owners and relevant to jump-starting our economy. I also serve along with Senator Groh on that Economic Outlook Committee. And so we have a bird's eye view and do a real deep dive into what we can be doing to help our economy recover. Maybe most importantly has been that I am a parent of 6 terrific children and have been involved in their education and in education in this state for many years. Started the largest and some would say maybe the most successful charter school in Idaho, North Star Charter School. I have advocated for both traditional and choice in education, and I will continue to work. I am the chair of the caucus chair of the STEM Education Caucus at the State House, and I have worked to bring both technology, the technology industry, and education together, and will continue to advocate for a 21st century education for our students that they deserve and that our employers deserve, and filling those 21st century jobs. We need to protect the Idaho that we love, and we need to create the opportunity for our kids and our grandkids to return to Idaho and this great state. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Representative DeMordon. Unfortunately, your challenger, Sally Brock, was unable to attend today due to a prior important engagement. So let's not penalize her for that due to scheduling conflicts. But now it's time we get into the meat of this debate and turn it over to Sean for some Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for joining us today again. So we're going to touch on different topics. I shared with you the legislative priorities that the Meridian Chamber of Commerce has adopted. Our first topic is going to be transportation. Transportation is crucial to Idaho's economy, and further delays will not only strangle Idaho's economic vitality, but will result in passing the problems to future generations. Accordingly, the Meridian Chamber of Commerce supports the following projects for transportation infrastructure, and that's the construction of the Linder Overpass at I-84 to provide additional arterial north-south access in our community, continue improvements on Highway 2026 west of Locust Grove to reduce congestion, improve safety, and create economic opportunity for development, and the completion of State Highway 16 extension to Highway 84 Central Valley Expressway. How do you propose, as a candidate, that the funding for these projects be approached? I'm going to start with Senator Groh. Thank you. Looks like you're muted, sir. There you go.
Did you unmute me?
Yes, you're good.
Thank you very much. Transportation is one of my key topics. I hear from people continually, the roads are so congested, I just can't deal with it. In the Two Rivers subdivision, I had the lady call me and say, I've sat here for 5 minutes, I can't get onto Eagle Road. It's imperative we get Highway 16 extended to the freeway. We've got to move some traffic off from Eagle Road and move it off from Linder, frankly, as well, and get it out further so that folks coming from downtown, et cetera, and out to Star, et cetera, can do that without having to go through all of the congestion here in Eagle and in the North Meridian area on Chinden. Proponent of getting Chinden fixed. you talk about getting it west of Locust Grove. That's exactly where I live. And so I'm anxious I'm all for you and with you on that one. As you look at funding, one of the things that we've been successful with is Costco, for example, who's coming in now, and with the STARS program, we've been able to get them to help fund the expansion of those roads on 10 Mile and also on Chinton around their new store. That's a huge opportunity to bring funding. I've voted for all of the transportation bills that have come forward. Transportation is one of my 3 priorities, along with education and the coronavirus, obviously, with the job situation that we've had and the health issues there. So that's one of the ways to do it. The general fund is not doing much. Well, it's all coming out of general fund right now, but I agree with your items you have here, registration fees. I think those could be increased. And other user fees could be certainly enacted, could be considered. And there could be some impact fees that could come into play. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Grow. Ms. Spencer.
Thank you. I do not work in the legislature. I am not privy to all of the detailed funding mechanisms that they put in place. But one of the ideas that I had was development, helping to pay for the roads that they will impact, such as Chinton. Widening has been long overdue. And using fees is another way to do it. But one of the things that I was looking at is, in addition to expanding the roads and funding new growth, is no one is talking about mass transportation. And our cities and towns in this valley are well past the size where it would be advantageous to have that amongst the towns, between the towns. It's a great way to move a number of people efficiently on our highways and on the crowd roads. So while we're expanding these roads, we can also move people faster in bulk, if you want to say, through them. And that's another avenue to consider. And funding from that, I don't think we fund mass transportation, and we need to do that. We can get matching federal funds, and that can help immensely. And then, of course, there are user fees. People who use this do pay for it. There is an upfront cost. There's no question about that. But over time, I have lived in communities where it pays for itself and it becomes the way to travel rather than driving. And that will alleviate a lot of the traffic that's on our roads.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. I'm going to circle back around to one of the comments that both of you made. You talked about the impact fees for businesses that are looking at expanding current roads and services that we have. But what about Highway 16? I mean, there's not any businesses there that are for that extension yet that's going to be paying for that. That's a project that seems to have stalled and not going anywhere. Senator Grow, you're in the legislature now. What can you do? What can we do to kind of move Highway 16 project along a little faster?
2 years ago, we passed $300 million in Garvey bonds. And those of us that live here in this community were hopeful that that was going to be going towards Highway 16 to move us to the freeway. One of the disadvantages we have is you've got different highway commissioners at the state level. So when we passed the funding for that Garvey bond for $300 million, we didn't have the legislature did not have the control over exactly where it went. Our anticipation was it was going to come this direction. Some of it did. We've been able to get another $90 million to buy the property, the right-of-ways on each side of Highway 16. And so that's happening now out by the new high school that's planned there, et cetera. So we got a little bit there. We've got obviously moved it all the way, wonderful highway from 44 to Chinton. And Garvey bonds are one of the ways that we can make that happen.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'd like to maybe pass this question on now to Representative Moyle. Representative Moyle.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I kind of got to disagree with you a little bit on Highway 16. The STARS bill, for example, was a bill that I did years ago, and that's proving that businesses are coming forward and doing and using it to accomplish things. If it wasn't for STARS, Chinden wouldn't be done right now. If it wasn't for STARS, you wouldn't get the next phase of Chinden from Linder back to Locust Grove. So I think that we are doing things, and businesses are coming forward. Remember, that project on 2026 is being funded by Costco and Winco. To say that Highway 16 is stalled out, I think, is a misnomer too. I mean, I know that the city of Meridian fought it for a long time and actually helped stall it from being done earlier, but if you paid attention to what's going on, the Transportation Board has approved over 90 million, and they are currently buying access for Highway 16. And if you watch, they funded the final design, which is taking place right now, and they should have that done by the end of December. You could see them building the next phase in the future. As for other funding sources, I think that you miss a really vital, important part. If you remember, I brought a bill forward last year that I got to the House floor, and I would have pushed it through, except the governor was against it. Remember, he voted against STARS when he was in the Senate. The only bill that's building these major projects other than Garvey, by the way. And I had a bill that would have required Amazon to help pay for Highway 16. Now again, the city of Meridian, the city of Nampa fought Highway 16 for years. Now they want it. I'm glad that welcome to the table. Let's get it built. But the city of Nampa pushed back on forcing Amazon to build part of that interchange for Highway 16. And the governor was worried about the bill because it does use some general funds. That's what they, get paid back with. So to say it's stalled out, I disagree with you on that. And I think that if we all work together, we can get it done this year and get that going forward. What else would you like to know?
Thank you. Well, we'll get to another question here in just a moment. Mrs. Curry, do you have any comments about transportation funding and how we should be approaching those needs?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I was just wondering, federal funding is available. We could advocate for that. We can have the state pay for some of this, since the revenue that we get from that highway benefits a lot, a big chunk of the state. We could have some kind of a joint coordination with adjoining cities, so it's not just the burden of Meridian, because Cuna and Caldwell and Nampa and Eagle, all these other little cities all benefit from having 16 built. So there's a couple of ways in which I think that would help pay for that highway.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to jump in here real quick. Quick question to that. You brought up some good arguments for the need for it. The challenge is getting the money. And Representative Moyle, I'm very, very familiar with your efforts and appreciate those. And we've got it halfway there. We know there's a need, and we know that some municipalities have been against that. Those times have now gone. What are you going to do specifically to make sure that you unite the highway districts, the mayors, the city councils between Meridian, Star, Eagle? All of those municipalities need to be engaged in here. You mentioned the frustrations with some of the highway districts. What specifically are you going to bring to the table to solve that problem?
Matt, it did look like we lost Representative Moyle there for a moment, so he may not have heard your entire question.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat it, Sean, or let's see if maybe
let's see if Representative DeMornot has some feedback on that.
Thank you. Great punts. That's great. I would echo what Representative Moyle was talking about, and that is we have seen a change in our municipal governments and their engagement on Highway 16. We have seen a change, and that has not always been there, but it is critically important. Your familiarity, I'm sure both some of your business leaders and of course those on the call with Compass, when Compass aligns with legislators and with ITD and ACHD, we can get things done. Now, you know that both Moyle, all three of us have strongly strongly advocated for additional funding at the state legislature. Our colleagues we have led the way with our colleagues, and of course with Chairman of the Transportation Committee, Representative Palmer. And we will continue to do that. But I'll tell you that the interesting change that has been made under our leadership, and that is that we have shifted in a small way from dedicated funds, which are fees, to general funds. And I think that is critical. You know, the loaf of bread that is delivered by, the semi truck to the grocery store is feeding all people in our state. Our transportation system benefits every single person in this state. And as such, general funds ought to be used. So this is a shift. The first shift was our TECM fund, which again was led by us folks here on the call, and we are very proud of that. We will continue to advocate for that. Fees will never be enough. This has to be funded by general funds, and you will continue to see us speak strongly about that.
Thank you, Representative Mornott. Moving on to economic development. Transportation challenges are one thing, but a lot of that's driven by our tremendous economic growth. The Meridian Chamber favors legislation that creates jobs, reduces regulation on business, encourages businesses to grow and prosper, and makes it easy for businesses to provide goods and services for our citizens to trade. What is your position on a local option tax authority and mechanisms for funding infrastructure associated with the new growth, including the impact fees? And how do you propose that we handle the national attention that Meridian and the Treasure Valley is getting as a best place to work and live? And how do we keep up with this growth as we're moving forward? Let's go back to Senator Grow to start this off.
Thanks, Sean. I think impact fees have a place, and I think particularly with schools right now, they don't have the opportunity to do that. One of the things that I think would be very helpful, because if you look at the property taxes and all of the challenges and complaints that we've had over the last several months, it's been our property taxes are increasing at an inordinate rate. And a good part of that relates to our schools because of all of the growth here. And again, you're talking to a former school board guy that's works on passing bond issues for high schools. We're getting a request for bond issues every couple of years. I think we ought to be looking at impact fees as we look at development that's putting new housing for these folks moving in. And I think those impact fees ought to be opened up to the schools primarily. I think that's where we have the great need is in education and funding education properly in the state. And to do that, I think with impact fees, we could have that such that as those developments took place, that the monies were used to retire and pay down indebtedness on the bond issues. That would be a huge benefit to all of the residents here in Meridian.
And Senator, what about the local option tax authority? What's your position on giving the communities the option to do a local option tax?
I have questions about that. I think it's an issue of, I'm against carte blanche for all cities and counties statewide, just to open it up. I think it's a matter of specific needs. And I think if there's a need that a community has and the voters are in favor of that, then I would consider a local option tax in limited circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Spencer, what's your position on the local option tax authority or other mechanisms to fund the growth?
Well, first of all, I am in favor of the local option. And I do think that I would have to disagree. I think that they do, every community should have that opportunity. Whether or not they want to take advantage of it, of course, is up to them. But local option taxes provide the community, local control is the best control. They know what their communities need, the leaders there do. And then the people are more involved in their government. They can choose the projects that are presented to them that are necessary. They can decide, and then they decide the amount that they want to fund them for. And they know the ramifications because it will hit them right where they live. So I am for local option taxes for all communities if they want to take advantage of it. Impact fees, it's growth. Voters want growth to pay for growth. So I think that they need to be considered, and I would be open to impact fees for schools. That is part. They're building subdivisions. Those are children in there. That's going to increase the number in the classroom. It's a logical move. Logical move.
Thank you. Let's see. Representative Moyle, I know you've been having some connectivity issues. Are you still with us?
Yeah, back now. What was the question?
So the question is, what is your position on local option tax authority for mechanisms for funding infrastructure associated with new growth and impact fees for communities?
Well, I think local options is a dumb idea. I think, we keep talking about more and more money. We've got to spend the money a little wiser. Idaho has one of the highest income taxes west of the Mississippi. You're above the middle of the road when it comes to sales tax, and your property taxes are climbing through the roof. I know that if a developer builds something, we built a facility here a while back, we had to pay impact fees for roads and for fire, and pay impact fees for the roads, the fire, and also for the parks. And we also paid hookup fees to sewer. And I keep hearing the cities cry about growth not paying its way and some of the other government agencies, but when the development goes in, the developer pays the hookup fee to the sewer, the hookup fee to the water, and he puts in all those services. He puts in the roads, he puts in the sidewalks, and he pays an impact fee to ACH for the roads. I think the problem may be not so much that we need more and more money, like raising sales tax even higher with local option. I heard one of the cities the other day say they wanted a local option income tax too, which is just insane. If the chamber really wants to incentivize businesses to come here, you don't tax them all the way out of the world so they don't come here. And again, I would remind you, we have one of the highest income taxes around. It doesn't make sense. I think the answer is maybe wiser use of the funds we have, maybe looking at where we're spending the money now. You're going to have to explain to me why some cities, similar sizes to others, can run their services in their cities for half of what the one next to them with the same size population is. I mean, there's things we need to look at before we start buying onto the Democrat slogans, raise more taxes, give another tax, give a tax. I think we need to do a little bit better job of spending what we have before we start adding taxes to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Moyle, just a quick follow-up question on that front. How do you pay for schools when it comes to growth?
One of the problems we have with schools is that they are unlike roads, cities, and others. They don't have an impact fee. But I think if you give schools an impact fee, and if it's done right, I don't think I would be against it. But if you do an impact fee for schools, it needs to be tied to paying for the bond. Remember that when somebody new moves here and they bring their children, that, they're exactly right. We got to build new buildings for those children. But if we do an impact fee, it ought to be tied to schools and not and one-time funding versus ongoing funding. One of the concerns I see with our schools is they're taking one-time money like supplemental and using them for ongoing expenses. That's just not a smart business move. When you know up front it's one-time funds, you shouldn't be tying into things like salaries. So I do know there's talk of some kind of an impact fee for schools. And I think that there probably is a way to do that if it's done right. I'm not sure what that way is. We've talked about it a little bit. We haven't found out yet, but I'm sure that there's a way if it's done right. But I'm still concerned that it's used to pay off the debts and pay off the impacts of the new children. Because remember, the teachers being paid by the income tax coming on and the sales coming on the other side. The problem is paying for the buildings, in my opinion, anyways, right now. We got to be careful though, because if you keep doing these impacts, you're going to, they get too high, you're going to do exactly the same thing. You're going to drive people away. And if the chamber believes it's important to have businesses come here and bring jobs and bring families and grow our community, we need to make sure that we don't disincentivize it with things like high impact fees, with things like local option sales tax, with things like high property taxes, with things like high income taxes. Pretty soon, you've created the same mess that these people are fleeing in some other state.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Moyle. Mrs. Curry, the question is to you. What's your position on local tax authority for the communities, and what other mechanisms do we need to look at for funding infrastructure?
Well, I look at this as an investment for the state. Okay, so the state of Idaho and future. I support sales tax opportunities, impact fees, especially for cities like Meridian that have enormous growth. West Ada School District is suffering, and they're paying back supplemental levies from years ago. If the state paid what they should pay and did what they should do, and reversed 2006 funding education, then a lot of the cities and counties would not be in the financial problems they're in right now. But that's education. I think infrastructure right now. I think that sorry, lost my train of thought. Yes, okay, that's pretty much it right now. Sorry, lost my train of thought there.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Curry. Representative DeMordon. Question.
Thank you. Thanks. In terms of transportation, I'm going to reiterate what I have already said, and that is, I think that it is critical for us to move to more general funds on the roads. There are mechanisms that we're using that are already in place, but those being supplemented by general funds is just critical. We need to continue our commitment to roads, and that happens on a larger scale and throughout the state when we commit general funds. Now, it is, I will tell you, a mind shift down at the State House, and it has begun, and I think it needs to continue, and we will see that impact then Meridian, Eagle, Star, that those funds absolutely will be there. So in terms of the mechanisms, we have some things in place for sure. In terms of overall funding, it has to be general funds. Now, impact fees, just a thought on this quickly, and that is we need to proceed with caution, folks. I mean, businesses are hurting, families are hurting, and to talk about raising taxes in this environment just makes no sense. So, I think we need to keep our eye on the ball. We need to be reducing regulation for our businesses. We need to do whatever we can to help people get back on their feet in terms of reducing those barriers. And that's what creates a strong economy. That's what creates a strong tax base that supports those things that we're committed to in terms of education and transportation.
Thank you, Representative DeMordon. All of you have touched on education, and that is definitely one of the priorities that the Meridian Chamber of Commerce has, as we're tightly connected with the West Ada School District in our community. And the Meridian Chamber supports efforts to expand the capabilities of our K through 12 schools to graduate all students with the necessary skills to successfully complete college and/or career technical education, including emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math. State-supported colleges and universities need to provide the relevant curriculum and trained workforce required if Idaho businesses to effectively compete in a global marketplace. With the rapid growth seen in Meridian, how else do you propose that the schools fund their future building needs if impact fees is not an option or doesn't meet all of those needs? Senator Groh, we'll begin again with you.
Well, I'm going to stick with impact fees because, we can talk about a variety of different choices and ways to do it. The important thing is to try to find one that we think might have a possibility of being passed. In legislature, we deal with more than 700 bills each session. And you've got 105 legislators there. And it's a matter of getting a consensus and working in collaboration with other legislators to get a consensus that we can move ahead on a particular bill. And I think we can get some movement on impact fees for schools, particularly. The funding of the day-to-day operations is one thing. The challenge, again, that we have here in West Ada is the cost of the buildings. And that's where we see these huge increases in property taxes. And so I'm going to work towards the impact fee. I'm going to stick with that one. I want to respond to your item here on College of Western Idaho. I think that's one of the best things we've had going here in Idaho. Career technical training is huge. We need to work with business and cooperation so that when students come out of the career technical training, they already have a job lined up, they have the skills, and they can move ahead with that. So I'm, as I mentioned before, in the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, I have selected education as we have subparts that we divide up. I selected education, which is $2.5 billion of our state funds, about 2/3 of the Idaho taxes that we receive from the citizens here. We spend that on education. And that is one of my big priorities, is making sure that K through 12 is properly funded. We did the career ladder. This last 5 sessions, we've had $100 million a year to teacher salaries over the last 5 years, in addition to the normal percentage increases that they get. We also raised the beginning pay for new teachers to $40,000. And Idaho, we have an interesting situation. We tend to have a lot of kids here, and so the cost of education per capita, we are actually spending quite well, because we are looking at funding the education based upon our ability. And with the little state of Idaho, with 2/3 of the budget going there, we continue to work on it. We continue to increase it. And I'm in favor of making that happen. As far as impact fees for the buildings, I'm going to try to push that. Thank you.
Okay.
A real
Mrs.
quick
Spencer.
follow-up on that.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. Just a quick follow-up. I think you mentioned that. Did you say that you believe that Idaho's education system is well-funded?
No, what I said is on a per capita basis, not on a per student basis. You always hear that it's 51st in the nation, all that kind of thing, per student. We tend to have large families. So if you look at Idaho, the little state that we are, and on the per capita, we're up in the upper half on a per capita basis for funding, not on a per student basis. So there's a big difference there. So we're trying to get more for education all the time. It's already at 2/3 of the budget. And we look at transportation, we look at all the other issues that have needs. We're moving as much as we can towards education. Thank you.
Mrs. Spencer, education funding. That seems to be the hot topic. How do you propose?
Yes, it is. As one of the people here who has experience in education, and I actually worked in the finance department at College of Western Idaho since before it opened. Frankly, my opinion on the legislature's job on funding is abysmal. I don't think they have ever funded it adequately, and I have direct experience with that. We are 51st of the nation. We pay $6,700 per student to educate, while we're paying $22,000 plus for every prisoner. What does that say about your priorities? It's embarrassing. First of all, we need to move the budget for schools back into the general fund. And it's unfortunate that cities have to run bonds. As a matter of fact, I thought for an O&M, it was illegal at one time, and I don't know how they changed that. When I worked at CWI, yes, we would get funding. And I will tell you, 4 months into the year, after you've planned all your money, they would claw back quite a bit, probably half. And we did this for several years running. And it's very difficult once you have earmarked that and you have almost paid for programs and for people to teach those classes. Idaho needs to invest more. You can do it with bonds, you can do it with impact fees, but the state of education in Idaho, I've had people in my district who are new families that come here that wonder if they need to move because they are absolutely distressed over the quality of education, and that's pre-COVID. One woman came from the Southeast where she said, colleges, schools aren't that great there. She goes, but we came here and we don't know what to do because our children are suffering.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Representative Moyle, if you're still with us, we'd love to get your thoughts on education funding for Idaho schools, specifically Meridian, with the growth that it's experiencing.
I think that you're seeing a big change in funding in schools in particular, and you may see a change in funding. And let me give you an example why. With this new COVID thing going on and the school's not opening, a lot of parents are very upset, rightfully so, that they can't get their children to school. And some of them are homeschooling them now. And in fact, one school district very close to West Ada, they say 30 to 40% of the children are now being homeschooled. I think that could cause a real dilemma for our educators if they don't open up soon and get those kids back, because if those parents decide that homeschooling is a better idea and keep them home and teach them there, then I think there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and that's an issue the legislature's been trying to address last couple of years, and that is that the money follows the students. Right now, the money doesn't necessarily follow the students. The districts can game the numbers to get more or less money, and some of the districts, in particular West Ada County, West Ada, are at a big disadvantage because of a lawsuit brought by Meridian School District in the 80s. They now get less per student than other school districts. I don't think that's fair. They ought to get the same. But I think you've got to wait for the water to settle, because I think that you're going to see an interesting dilemma at the legislature this year when you have all this money that's supposed to go to students that are now being homeschooled and not in the public schools. And there could be a whole different dynamic on how we handle education depending on what happens. I think you're going to see bills this year brought forward that will include voucher system where to incentivize parents to take their kids to different schools or to homeschool. I think you're going to see some incentives to send money back to those parents that have their children in school now that are being disadvantaged because the children aren't going back to school full time. So I think when you talk about school funding, the jury's out on what this new world we're living in looks like, and how the legislature is going to handle it. And it'll be interesting to see what the legislature does this year, because I think it's going to be it could be very big.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Curry, would you mind sharing your thoughts on education funding and where we are?
First off, there's a difference between homeschool and virtual school, because I know that. I do that every day. For the last 8 weeks, I teach chemistry virtually, and my kids are getting an education. I've not met them personally, but I meet them every day and meet with them every day, teach them chemistry. So there's a big difference between homeschool and virtual school, just so you know there. As far as funding goes for education, we need to go back to pre-2006. Eliminate the need for supplemental levies. That way, we wouldn't have the unevenness that we have throughout the state, where we have a small school in St. Mary's that's 100 years old, and they can barely stay alive because they don't have the funding to fund the maintenance and operations of that school. If we go back to pre-2006, where the state takes on the schools, then we wouldn't have our property tax problems. 40% of my tax bill is from schools because of levies, and I care, so I'll pay it. But if the state took its responsibility, I mean, the Constitution says, and I won't read the whole thing, but it's the duty of the legislature of Idaho to establish and maintain a general, uniform, and thorough system of public free con schools. So it's their responsibility to do that. And we've got ways to get money. We've got money in taxes from the old exemptions that are worn out. And we have ways in which we could use internet sales tax. There's a couple of ways in which money can help the general fund, and then I'm going to be quiet, and then we could use that for the schools. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Curry.
Can I make a comment here?
Yes. Yes.
I don't think that people really understand, and maybe my opponent doesn't understand, what happens if you go back to 2006. Does she realize that you will have a huge, like millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars increase in property taxes for those who live in West Ada? And does she realize that that money would then be distributed to other parts of the state? Does she realize that sales tax is a much stabler form of revenue for schools and has been? And if you look at the revenue difference between what would be today and what we had then, it's almost exactly the same. The only difference is the money that's coming from sales tax is constant. It doesn't fluctuate up and down based on home values. So I think that we got to be careful when we keep trying to go back into the past. I think the legislature did what they did in 2006, and I think the legislature is doing what they're doing now today to make sure that the fund for education is stable, that the dollars are there for what they need. And I would also remind my opponent, I have sat down with my homeschooled grandchildren, add virtual taught grandchildren. This virtual teaching thing from the several classes I sat in are a joke. I would much rather them be in the homeschool portion because they're learning everything versus this. They can't watch, they can't hear, they can't turn in assignments. This virtual school is a joke, and if you don't believe me, just go ask the people in your community, that are dealing with it. So if we're going to go down that road, let's compare apples and apples and oranges and oranges, and let's figure out a way to do what's best for the children, not what sounds good in a political soundbite that's not necessarily true.
Mrs. Curry?
I'm on here. Okay. Well, I didn't want to get into a pissing match. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. But I know that in most of the schools that are being taught virtually, that it is being done well. And this is a year that's a very unique year, and it's a temporary thing. It's not something that we're going to live with COVID for the rest of our lives. You know, hopefully it's going to be short term, and the teachers are working hard to do the best they can do with what they're given. And so I know that education is being done because I see it every day. I know that there's a way we may not be able to go exactly to the way it was before 2006, but I feel the state should be taking in the responsibility that the Constitution says it should be, and taking the brunt of that cost and not make the schools pay for what they're paying for.
Okay, thank you. Representative DeMorda, give you an opportunity to comment on education before we move to the next topic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I certainly do quite a bit of work down at the State House in terms of education and very passionate about it. This spring, when our kids were home, I became aware of a program, an opportunity for our students in Idaho. I pursued that aggressively. That's called Idaho Codes. We were able to bring together private donations and public monies and offer coding certification online, and reached nearly 2,000 students in the last 5 months. Students that are online learning to code, supported by industry. So those are the kinds of successes that we need to be looking at, those kinds of partnerships and those kinds of innovative approaches. Now, talking about innovation, CWI, they have been a success story when we talk about their online campuses, their expanded opportunities. Absolutely, we need to look at expanding those opportunities for our students. Again, it's 21st century education for our 21st century students, and that again will fill 21st century jobs. So we can be innovative and creative here, and we ought to be. I think that in terms of investing in education, it's the same thing that you do in your businesses. It is return on investment. What is that ROI? You've seen the legislature take a whack at that in terms of our expanded commitment to early literacy and literacy intervention dollars. When we talk about investments of our neighbors and friends' taxpayer dollars, we need to be very specific in those investments that we are looking to. What are we getting for that? And when we build that into legislation and funding, we are successful, and our kids are the winners. So looking at ROI in all of our investments is critical. We did that in literacy. We've done that in technology, and we've done that with our veteran teachers. I am proud to say that we did increase our funding for our veteran teachers, and I advocated for that. I was passionate about that because we need to because we know that we get results with our veteran teachers in terms of our kids. So when we can make those kinds of investments, we absolutely should be. And that's the way we should be forwarding our education into the 21st century.
Thank you. Our final topic for the day is local government. The Meridian Chamber supports measures that enhance the amenities in our community to make Meridian a great place, or continue to make Meridian a great place to live, work, and raise a family. What is your position on the ability of communities to utilize mechanisms like urban renewal and auditorium districts to fund local projects? Senator Grow, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think it's important that we look at cooperative efforts between private enterprise and the city. I think there needs to be, Dan was talking about return on investment. When you have an auditorium district or some other facility you're trying to build, it ought to be able to generate some revenue to eventually pay for itself. Free enterprise, always make sure that you don't get into something unless you can afford to pay for it. I think now is not the time to be raising taxes on folks with those kinds of options. All that is people are talking about tax on their property. They're concerned about how they're increasing so heavily. If we then open another means of taxation, that's a shift to another group of folks. I think to be very careful with that and not be increasing taxes at this point in time, particularly. You talked about making sure the counties have the necessary revenue, et cetera. And I feel that the property tax bills that we're investigating is with our property tax committee right now. We're mindful of that. We recognize that this is a statewide issue, not just here in the Treasure Valley. And so as we propose legislation, we're considering the needs of the smaller communities as well as those here in the metropolitan area. So we understand the need for the local community to be able to fund itself. And we feel that the options we're looking at will be helpful actually to you. And we'll be exploring many of those here over the next couple of months as we get ready for the legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Grow.
Oh, let me add, if I may, you also talked about council districting. I'm all for that on the over 100,000. And I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Mrs. Spencer, what's your position on the ability of communities to utilize urban renewal and auditorium districts to fund their local projects?
That's an area that I am looking to in each community. I think that the opportunity and the option should be available, but this is now in the COVID era. We need to be very careful about what we do. If it is going to bring revenue into the community and that is penciled out and clear, certainly that's a project you want to go for. But if there is, and everything is definitely right now up in the air, if there's questions and big questions, we need to be careful with moving forward. If we're going to go down the list, as far as that ensure that cities and communities have the necessary revenue, of course, that's imperative. That's one of the things we need to do. And I also support the redistricting for the council. I think that benefits our communities now have grown so large that you will now get information from all sectors, and that's important in growth and going forward and in planning.
Thank you. Representative Moyle, urban renewal and auditorium district. What's your position?
I really have a problem with urban renewal. Think about, you've got a group of unelected individuals spending property tax dollars that in some cases you could make the case was literally stolen from other taxing districts. Now, if the cities want to do urban renewal with their increment, the money that's coming from their property taxes collected on that project or that new area, then I'm okay with it. That's not what happens. They take money from highways. They take money from cemetery districts. They take money, in some places, from the community college. They take their money. We haven't fixed that yet. They take money from all those outlying districts. And until last year, when we got the bill through that now requires them to talk to the highway districts, they took all the highway district money. You've got the city of Boise proposing all these urban renewal districts in high growth areas so that they can skype that money off at the expense of the county and those other overlying districts, including fire districts and others. It's wrong. So, and in some cases, then these unelected individuals take that revenue and subsidize projects for some of their friends. Go look at Gardner, for example, in the city of Boise. I think that urban renewal, if you want to have it, I'm okay with it with the one caveat that the overlying taxing district has to approve that city stealing the money from them. So if they come to an agreement that they're okay with them taking those property taxes and they have influence on the project and they're okay with it, that's one thing. But the way it's set up today, they have no say. And it's just, think about it. Unelected individuals are spending your property taxes that they're taking from your taxing district without your taxing district's approval. It's crazy. If it's a good tool, then use your money at the city, or at least have input from those overlying taxing districts before you take their funds.
Thank you. Mrs. Curry, what's your position on the ability of communities to utilize urban renewal and auditorium districts for local projects?
I think that the state has taken away too much control from the cities and counties. They should be helping to link cities and counties with services that citizens of any state should expect. If so, we wouldn't need supplemental levies and we wouldn't need other focused funding. So I think that the state should be taking on more of that traditional role and responsibilities and putting less burden on the local government as far as the minutia that is required. Then you wouldn't need to do the auditorium districts as much, or the other type of self-funding that you're trying to come up with. So, state.
Thank you very much. Representative DeMorno.
Thank you. Sean, I appreciate you deferring to me even without an opponent here joining us today. What I hear is tax, tax, tax. And in this, in the state at which we are right now in terms of COVID and in terms of the economic impacts to our communities, I think we have to be incredibly sensitive to individuals and businesses. Now, you've seen us as a legislature lower the taxes on businesses over the last few years. That's critical to our economy. I believe that government is best when it's closest to the people. And certainly the bill that we passed last session in terms of the council districting and with municipalities per 100,000 population was critical in, again, establishing that government closest to the people. Even when you talk about the auditorium and the urban renewal plans, districts, again, being sensitive to the overlying taxing districts is critical. And again, having the taxpayer constituent involved in the process is critical. So I think that this idea of tax is just not the place that we should be, or the conversations that we should be having at this point as we look to rebuild and people are hurting, jobs and economy. That should be the focus. And I appreciate our business owners that may be listening, that I appreciate the tough spot that they have been in and continue to be in. And that's where we should be focusing our efforts right now, in what we can do for you to get people back to work. A strong economy is going to lend itself to those things like auditoriums and other things that may not be essential right now. Let's focus on the essential, folks.
Quick follow-up, Representative DeMore. You mentioned the auditorium district. There may be folks on here that aren't familiar with that. Could you explain what an auditorium is, how it's funded, and then why you do or do not support that? I'm a little fuzzy on your position there.
Okay. Thanks. Just want to make sure I'm still not, that I'm not muted. You know, the auditorium district, obviously, we've seen that in Boise City. And we have, when you don't take those funds and get those approved by the voters to increase taxes on them to fund projects, you're doing a great disservice to your voters and your citizens. So when citizens have the ability and opportunity to be voting to increase those taxes for time, and again, I would agree that those absolutely have to be time bound when we look at those time bound increases of taxes. We have to go to the voter, and we did just that. At least made a step towards that with the last bill in the last legislative session.
Sean, I'm going to just real quick. I believe auditorium districts are funded from taxes paid by visitors to hotel rooms. How do you get visitors to vote on whether or not the project should pass? That's why I'm a little fuzzy here. It says, because as I understand it, auditorium district taxes and all the funds generated from that are tourists, not your local citizens. And I'm having a hard time understanding why anyone would be opposed to having those who visit and use our great state help fund some of the amenities that we want to see grow here.
Thanks for the clarifying question, Matt. Appreciate that. And I was going off track on that and not articulating that. When we maximize those taxes, that's helpful. Unfortunately, those tourist dollars, those conference dollars, those convention dollars are not flowing into our state right now. And doing what we can to, again, attract those visitors and attract and build back up our tourism industry is going to be important. So thanks for clarifying, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are over our hour, so I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to make a closing statement, a brief closing statement on why the people of Meridian should vote for you to represent them at our Idaho legislature this year. Representative Warnock, we're going to start with you since you don't have an opponent in the room with us today. So the mic is back to you.
Thank you. You know, I believe that my record at the State House stands for itself. I have been very proud of the work that I have done in terms of transparency, particularly in the work that I've done in terms of occupational licensing and reducing the barriers on our businesses. That work has been done jointly with the executive branch. It's been an executive and legislative two-pronged approach to reducing those barriers on our businesses and on our occupations, and has just been critical in getting people back to work. Very proud of that work that I've been able to do, as well as transportation. Is it enough? No, it hasn't been, but we will continue to push for that funding on a statewide level on general funds on our roads. In terms of education, again, you've heard me talk about retaining our veteran teachers, investing in education with an eye on results, and school choice. So I think that I've been proud of my record. I would hope that I have earned the vote of those business leaders that are part of the Meridian Chamber of Commerce, as well as friends and neighbors. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Mrs. Curry. Why should the public vote for you for State Representative Position A, District 14?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying I'm not a politician. I'll tell you that right now. I'm an educator. I care for the over 5,000 kids that I've taught in this state. I care for the state. I have grandchildren here. I have children here, and I would like to maintain the quality of the state that I know the state can be. And I've seen a decline in education. I've seen a huge decline in transportation due to very poor planning, which should have been happening 20 years ago, because we've been growing quite a bit, and the legislature should have been doing this 22 years ago when my opponent started. Taxes is a concern. I don't want to pay taxes any more than I have to, but I know that we've had a lot of growth, and with growth comes responsibility to the people who live in this state. And there are ways to fund. There are ways in which the state can fund this. All of the problems that we're having with the growth. But I think we need somebody in there that's going to think out of the box and think in a way that's what's best for people. Thank you. All right.
Sean, you're muted.
Representative Moyle.
Thank you. I think that if
You're welcome.
if reelected, I'll continue to do what I've done in the past. You know, you've seen me pass bills that help local communities, counties, and cities incentivize business to move to their area with tax incentives, bills that I did. You've seen me do things like the SAR bill. If it wasn't for that bill, you wouldn't have Chinden being widened right now. Never would have happened without the bill that I brought forward, or 16 be as far along as it is. And you wouldn't see that if it wasn't for me. You wouldn't see the taxes where they are today, that even higher than what they are. And if reelected, you will see me focus my efforts like I did last year on property taxes. There is no reason in the world for those of us that have been living here our whole life, forced out of our homes because of somebody moving here from another state. And I disagree with my opponent. There is no reason to be raising taxes. You just have to spend the money a little bit better, not raise taxes. Say what you want, Cindy. Raising taxes does not help make Idaho a great state. It helps make Idaho a worse state, and it doesn't fix the problems. We have a spending problem, and if we focus our spending on the right areas, we can fix it. If I'm, again, it's been a privilege to serve the people of Idaho, and if I'm elected again, you will see me focus where I was last year on issues that I think are important. You'll see me focus on finishing 16. You'll see me focus on getting the income tax levels down. You'll see me focus on how we get the property tax thing issue resolved, and then hopefully I can count on your vote, and if so, I'll do my best to represent you the way I have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Moyle. Mrs. Spencer, would you mind sharing with us why the people of District 14 should elect you for state senator?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank the Meridian Chamber of Commerce, the business owners, and all of the hardworking people watching this. I love Idaho, and I have since I set foot in this state. But we have stagnation in our government, and part of it is partisan politics. That's not getting us anywhere. For businesses, last year our legislature passed bills that hurt business, and there was no need to. Those dollars from the tourists and the conferences, while COVID has played an extremely big part in us not getting them, there were problems before that. We had warnings that we weren't going to get them anyhow because of our legislature. The people are realizing this on a broad scale. They're tired of it. And right now with COVID, they're a little bit afraid. What they want is leadership, and they want leaders to lead, and they want to be included. I'm a fighter. I had to fight to get on the ballot. I couldn't pay the fee like everyone else. I had to get signatures, and I got 4 times what I needed, and now I'm on the ballot. I could only raise half the money, but I raised more. I worked twice as hard, and I'm still here. So I'm going to fight for our businesses. I'm going to fight for our workers. I'm going to fight for the people of Idaho to be part of the government, to be heard by their government, and to know what their government is doing or not doing on their behalf. I'm excited. We have a bright future. COVID has provided a lot of opportunities as well as all of the problems, and we need to fix it better, not like it was. Create that better vision, and I want to be part of that, and I can be part of that. So I am an independent. I am not beholden to partisan politics. I am not beholden to a party or any special interest. The only people I'm beholden to are the people, and I will fight for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Senator Groh, why should the people of District 14 re-elect you to office?
I moved to Boise. Well, I was born in Moscow, and Dad graduated from the University of Idaho. I was 3, moved to Boise at that time when there was about 20,000 people. So I was raised here. I love this community. I love the state. I've watched it grow, and I've been a part of it. And we raised our 8 children here. 6 of the 8 are married here in the Valley. I've got 30 grandchildren here. 11 are in the West Ada School District. So I'm a huge proponent of education, because that's our future. Our children are our future. And the more we can do to support education and have it help our kids be prepared to be great citizens and to provide for their families, I'm all for it. And we'll work to make that happen. Highway 16 has been one of my desires since I began this little political stint. And I'm all for working with Mike and others, and Gahan and Joe Moyle to make sure that we can get some additional money and get that thing clear to the freeway. It's got to happen. We've got to have that to help relieve the congestion we're experiencing. Property taxes, I mentioned I'm on the property tax working group. We're looking at various solutions. We'll bring those forward in this legislative session to relieve the homeowners of the property tax burden that they are carrying. It is unsustainable the way the taxes have increased, and we need to deal with that. Part of that is education on the building of the schools. We talked about impact fees and ways that we can help get those schools funded without having an excessive burden on the people that are already here. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. As a CPA, small business owner, all of my professional career has been here in the Valley. I love the Valley, I love the people. Happy to represent the citizens of District 14. Look forward to doing it again. Thank you so much.
Sean, you're muted, but I think you were passing it to me. Thank you very much. Just to close this out here, I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for joining us. I know middle of the day on a weekday, fortunately with technology, we're able to record this so that folks can listen to it later. This district in particular is one of the most, I think, important districts, at least in the Treasure Valley, mainly because a lot of the challenges that relate to growth in schools tend to fall right in the mix of 14 and then the edges of Meridian there. So thank you for all the work you do. Thank you to the Meridian Chamber of Commerce for bringing together this group. We've got a few more of these scheduled for later this week. The Idaho Press and Meridian Press are proud to support their efforts on keeping our electorate informed. So thank you so very much. And Sean, that's all I've got from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And once again, thank you to all the candidates that joined us today. We really do appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and appreciate you taking the opportunity to run for public office and serve the citizens of District 14. So thank you very much. This program will be available on YouTube, LinkedIn, within about 15 minutes. You can share it out. And tomorrow we will be having District 22 join us for a forum. So thank you all very much for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Have a good day. Stay safe.